Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Stewart, and today we're going to follow up on our news release from June 3rd, which talked about our night project and a drill core recompilation project that we're going to be undertaking this summer. There's 31,000 meters of core on site that we have inventoried, we've modeled. I'm going to run through our models, and we're going to look to put a 43101 resource on this project. It's our only asset that does not actually have a 43101 resource. That's going to change, we believe, in the near term. We also think that this project is pretty interesting in terms of timing because what's going on with our neighbor on the Juby project directly to our south, which is owned by a major mining company called Pan American Silver. It's a 4 million ounce deposit, which is substantial when you consider it's right in the middle of Ontario, one of the better places to do business, and you can drive right to it. And when you combine the Juby with our project, we think it really starts to get quite interesting. So let's get started with the presentation. As I said, this is exclusively focused on the night. This is the forward-looking statements. So here's what the night is, just for some background on the provenance of how we came about it. We consolidated this land package about 18 to 24 months ago. We brought it into Orefinders. It's now owned 100%. You can see the Knight project as we now call it, and we call it the Knight because it's a Knight township. It's a collection of properties that have had a lot of work in the past, including the Dugan, the Porphyry Lake, the Tiranite, which was a former producing mine with excellent infrastructure. We acquired what's called the Tiranite extension, which I'll show you in the model. We clearly see the mineralization extends on trend, and that's where we're going to build ounces in future drill programs. And then there's the Minto, which is well known because it had some pretty eye-popping drill holes there that we're not shy about talking about. It's 18 grams over 65 meters. 13 grams over 82 meters. Those are exceptional. Of course, those are in a breccia pipe, which is call it a carrot in the ground. And so, these things tend to happen in clusters. So we believe that there are more breccia pipes to be found. But for this to be what we think it can be, which is a huge world-class deposit, world-class, we're not there yet, but when you consider you got 4 million ounces there, and you got these high-grade breccia pipes, and we see a porphyry system there. We do see some porphyry mineralization that has been drilled with this sort of disseminated material. So a lot of work needs to be done to take it to that world-class type status, but that's the potential we see. And that's what we're working towards, but one day at a time. So that's really the history of the project and how it came to be. As I said, there's been a lot of work and there's a lot of drill core, and that's why I think this project in particular is so interesting. When you think about 31,000 meters of drilling, and there's been substantially more drilling, but we actually have that core. To drill that at about $150 a meter all in is roughly $5 million of drilling, which we have. And as I'll show you in the intersections, these intersections are or grade or width in many of them, and so it has to be put all together, which we have done in-house. But in order for us to discuss grades, tons, and implied ounces in a public way, it has to be done independently in the 43101 system, and that is our objective. We think we can do that in a very cost-effective way. So this is an efficient way for us to establish what is deemed as value in the public markets these days, which is to publish a 43101 deposit. So what else is I can tell you about this project? Why it's particularly interesting is because our Knight project sits on top of what's known as the Juby deposit. The Juby is 4 million ounces. It's not pit constrained, so it needs more work, but clearly there's lots of gold in the system. The Juby itself has sort of been an orphan as it's been traded from Temex to Lakeshore to Tahoe and now to Pan American. And as I've said before, it's an open secret that Pan American is looking to sell this in combination with their Timmins operations, the Bell Creek, as well as their Fengib operations. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the near term you will see the Juby change hands. As I said, I've had some guesses in the past, but either way, my anticipation, it will be in the hands of somebody who is focused in Ontario, because this project and our project has not seen any drilling action in years and years and years. I think 2012, and which is a shame, which is a statement on the market as a whole, because people have not been focusing on projects. But to me, that smells like opportunity. You put these two projects together and you've got something substantial. I do believe that the Juby needs us and vice versa. So we see these projects as effectively one and the same. It's just a question of who buys when, at what price, and at what time. So that's how we view the area. We certainly think it's an opportune time to be doing an efficient and potentially seriously value add operation on this project, as the Juby is in the midst of a transaction. So what else can we do here? I talked largely about the Juby. As I said, the Juby is 4 million ounces, and that's a global envelope. It's sort of separated in two different deposits, a 3 million ounce and a 1 million ounce. What I will say is that this deposit has not really been tested at depth, and nor has much of the work done on our Knight project. It's really only been drilled to 300 meters. So and when you consider, the stuff out in, La Ronde goes in Macassa, those are 2 kilometers deep. So there's a whole lot of unknowns here. But usually when you want to make a mine at 2 kilometers, it has to make sense in the first kilometer or the first 500 meters. And we see a lot of potential here. Clearly, there's a lot of gold in the system. So again, this is something I talked about. I'll reference you to our June 3rd news release. We talk about exactly what we're going to do. It's really, we're validating this core for a fraction of the cost to drill it. So 31,000 meters, 5 million ounces, $5 million worth of drilling. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our market cap. That's just the state of the market these days. Nothing makes sense in my mind, but things can change, and when they do change, they tend to change very quickly. I emphasize we've modeled this deposit, and this is the stuff that we've modeled. So going back, and this is just a selection of drill results that we have. You see the Tiranite. Again, the Tiranite was a former producing mine. Intersections of 10 grams over 14 meters, 4 grams over 20 meters. Pretty substantial stuff. It's not that deep. The Minto, of course, has excellent intersections. Again, that's in a breccia pipe. So, in terms of vertical ounces per meter, it's limited, but it's an awful lot of gold, and it came from somewhere. And ultimately, that's what we're looking for. And then there's the Dugan, which is right at surface. You see some pretty interesting intersections there, nearly 50 meters at 2 grams. 30 meters at 2 grams, etc. I won't run through all these, but look, there's a lot of gold there, and I do not believe that we are getting any value or respect, if you will, for this asset. Again, we acquired it effectively for $1 million in shares when we did that transaction. A pretty good deal. If we were to go out there and drill these drill holes tomorrow, I think our share price would likely go up. There would be a lot of anticipation, but because for whatever reason the market deems holes not drilled by you to be less interesting, you do not get the share appreciation upon that acquisition. I view things very differently, but time will tell. So again, please review these at your own time. We put this, this is just a picture of the core, so you can see the facilities here. This is the Tiranite property. Again, it's got a huge, very large core shack, some inside, some outside. This is just a picture of the core. It probably doesn't mean much unless you're a geologist, but this is what we've modeled. Again, you can go onto orefinders.ca. We have put together our 3D interpretation of all the drill results. We've spent a good portion of a number of months ago going through all of these deposits and putting them together and make heads or tail. You can see the Tiranite deposit. I'll point it out there because it's particularly interesting. There's quite a lot of gold there and decent intersections, but what's interesting to us is that when this was producing back in the 80s and 90s, and even it had another era prior to that in the 30s and the 40s, they did not have what we call the Tiranite extension. And we can clearly see, as we've denoted here, the exploration potential. It's been drilled at surface, but we see this mineralization going down dip in such a direction. So what you see here in terms of these, call it, for lack of a better term, blobs, these are our internal interpretation of what a resource would look like. We've modeled it here on the Tiranite. This is what we would or one would depict in a 43101 resource in terms of tons and grades. Same thing with the Minto here. You can see the shape of this breccia pipe Porphyry Lake, and then Dugan. You can see Dugan holds together quite nicely in terms of mineralization at surface. To me, Dugan is a real sort of sleeper in terms of upside potential. And the Porphyry Lake as well, we get some pretty good, nicely disseminated mineralization there. Again, we're looking for the porphyry, which you think of the Minto deposit in terms of like a finger, like that's what a breccia pipe is, and there's usually 3 or 4 or 5 fingers. You're ultimately looking for the palm or the hand where that mineralization is sourced from, and you know, that's ultimately the porphyry system. So that's what the model's like. Again, we've got the 3D videos on our website if you want to look at them. This is just a shot of the Tiernite shaft, etc. It was rehabilitated back in the 90s. There is a ramp. We are looking at this in a different context in terms of how this was interpreted back in the 80s and the 90s and before that. We're not so sure that this infrastructure is certainly the hoist and whatnot, but we'll probably have to rehab the shaft and certainly the ramp, etc. But nonetheless, this property does have good provenance. So essentially that's it. Just a quick update on what we're doing. I wanted to explain that June 2nd news release. We think it's a creative way to add value, bring attention to an area that is going to have a lot of M&A activity very soon. So I'll leave it at that. Again, my name's Steve Stewart. These are my contacts. Happy to hear from any shareholders. Thank you.